So if you think back to 1938, thousands of Americans were literally fleeing their homes because a radio broadcast convinced them Martians were actively invading the Earth.
Right. The whole War of the Worlds panic.
Exactly. And, flash forward decades later, and you had people completely convinced that 5G cell towers were somehow spreading a biological virus.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they were going so far as to try and actually dismantle the towers.
It's wild how consistent that behavior is.
It really is. Human beings just have this remarkably consistent, almost predictable track record of looking up at the sky, seeing something they don't understand, and immediately assuming the absolute worst.
Or, on the flip side, assuming the absolute most magical thing possible.
Yes, exactly. And it is a universally humbling experience, right? To get completely swept up in a wild rumor, you share it with 3 friends, your heart is racing, only to find out days later that there was a thoroughly mundane, logical explanation.
Yeah, we all experience that cognitive whiplash. Yeah. You're just left staring at your phone or standing in your kitchen, trying to retrace the steps of your own logic. Just wondering how you could have possibly bought into the hysteria so quickly.
And so deeply, yeah. Usually we just sort of brush that embarrassment off and move on. But today, we are doing a deep dive into a piece of source material that perfectly captures that exact human experience and then brilliantly dissects the mechanics of it.
I'm really excited for this one.
Me too. Now, at first glance, the text we're analyzing today might seem a bit unconventional for an audience interested in science and critical thinking, because it's actually an excerpt from a children's story.
Right.
It's called The Sweet Science of the Chocolate Comet Mystery.
Which, sounds completely whimsical on the surface.
It sounds like a simple, sugary tale about candy raining from the sky. But our mission today is to look past that sugarcoating. Because when you actually break down the mechanics of the narrative, it sells as an absolute masterclass in critical thinking, data mapping, and the scientific method.
It really does.
These are incredibly sophisticated skills that are, highly relevant for any adult trying to navigate today's relentless information overload.
The author essentially built a Trojan horse for the scientific method. They use the framework of a children's mystery to teach foundational principles of how we know what we know.
Right.
And, more importantly, the specific psychological traps that cause us to fool ourselves into thinking we understand things that we actually don't.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to really appreciate the science embedded in this text, we have to start with the initial human reaction to an unprecedented event.
The panic phase.
Right. So the story drops us into a place called Sprinkle Valley. And one morning, the residents wake up to this massive, inexplicable disruption in their reality. There is a giant object shaped like a chocolate comet just streaking across the sky.
And it's not just a streak of light.
No, not at all.
It's a physical object interacting with the environment, leaving this very specific, tangible trail behind it.
Right. It is actively dropping a trail of chocolate sprinkles, chocolate chips, and tiny marshmallows as it zooms overhead.
Which is quite the visual.
Oh, totally. And the whole town just completely loses its collective mind. They immediately start chasing this sweet trail. But the author focuses our attention on 2 children, Ava and Ben, who perfectly encapsulate the dual ways human beings are wired to react to sudden change.
They're great archetypes.
They really are. Ava looks up at this bizarre anomaly in the sky and shouts, "It looks delicious!" While Ben looks at the exact same anomaly and shouts, "It looks dangerous!"
Such a stark contrast.
Right. And it's just like how we react to disruptive news or new technology today. We instantly categorize the unknown as either a magical opportunity, delicious, or an existential threat, dangerous, before we actually know what it is.
What's fascinating here is how accurately this portrays the evolutionary psychology of our cognitive biases.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, the author is really highlighting the human brain's desperate need to eliminate ambiguity. From an evolutionary standpoint, early humans who spent too much time pondering an ambiguous rustle in the bushes.
Usually got eaten by whatever was in the bushes.
Exactly, they got eaten. So the amygdala, which is the brain's emotional processing center, is designed to rapidly categorize the unknown in milliseconds. It completely bypasses the slower, analytical prefrontal cortex.
We just want to put the unknown thing in a familiar box as fast as possible.
We have to. Processing ambiguity is computationally expensive for the brain.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and the 2 most primal, energy-efficient boxes we have are reward and threat. So Ava categorizes the anomaly as a reward. It's delicious. It's a magical gift. Ben categorizes it as a threat. It's dangerous, an existential crisis.
And neither of them has any proof.
Right, neither has a single shred of empirical data about what this object actually is. But they've both already made a definitive, immovable judgment about its fundamental nature based entirely on, like, a dopamine or adrenaline response.
I see this exact dynamic play out every single time a disruptive new technology hits the news cycle.
Oh, for sure.
Think about the public reaction when a radically new artificial intelligence tool drops. Immediately, the discourse fractures into Ava and Ben.
Yep.
One camp instantly says, this is delicious, it's going to solve all of humanity's problems, and the other camp instantly says, this is dangerous, it's the literal end of human civilization. And both sides are screaming their conclusions before anyone has even read the documentation.
And that rush to judgment creates this massive feedback loop of chaos.
Yeah.
In the story, the town isn't investigating at all. They are just mindlessly running after the candy trail.
Just reacting to the symptoms.
Exactly. Reacting to the falling marshmallows without stopping to analyze the root cause. This really establishes the central conflict of the story, the desperate societal need to hit the pause button.
Which brings us to the grounding force of the narrative. Because if the whole town is acting purely on amygdala-driven impulse, they need someone to introduce a methodology to investigate the unknown.
Enter Professor Peanut.
Yes, the town's resident scientist. He literally pumps the brakes on the whole panic party with a phenomenal quote.
I love this part.
He tells the crowd, before we eat space chocolate, we should investigate. Which is honestly the ultimate motto for media literacy in the 21st century.
It perfectly distills the concept of empirical isolation.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
It basically means observe before you consume. You have to separate the physical phenomenon from the emotional panic surrounding it.
Right. So the professor recruits Ava and Ben, shifting them from passive observers into active investigators, and they find their first piece of physical evidence, a giant chocolate chip sitting in a field.
And they start with basic observation.
Yeah, the text notes they use sensory observation first. Ben says it smells like chocolate. Ava says it feels like chocolate.
Yeah.
And then the professor takes it, runs a chemical test on it, and confirms with a smile it is chocolate.
That is a pivotal moment in the scientific method, establishing a baseline physical fact.
But wait, I have to challenge this step.
Okay, go for it.
Because if Professor Peanut runs a test and confirms that, yes, this material falling from the sky is genuinely real chocolate, doesn't that just validate Ava's wild, delicious space comet theory? She thought it was space chocolate. He proves it is chocolate. I would think that confirming her bias would just make the town even more hysterical.
This raises an important question, and it gets to the very heart of why scientific inquiry is so difficult to communicate to the public.
Yeah.
Because in science, validating a surprising data point does not prove the overarching sensational hypothesis wrapped around it.
But practically speaking, how do you train an adult brain to decouple a verified fact from the unverified narrative?
It's really hard.
Because if a headline claims that a secret shadow government is putting microchips in the water supply, and then a report comes out proving that, yes, the shadow government agency exists, people immediately assume the microchip part is true too. They feel vindicated.
The underlying mechanism there is conflation. So let's look at Ava's hypothesis.
Yeah.
A magical celestial comet made of chocolate is flying through space and dropping candy on our town.
Right.
That is a massive multi-part assumption. The professor's chemical test only validates one tiny, isolated fragment of that assumption, the molecular structure of the material on the ground. It does not validate the celestial comet part. It doesn't validate the flying through space part. Think of it like diagnosing a massive car failure by looking at a puddle of liquid under the engine.
Okay.
You test the puddle and definitively prove this is motor oil. That is a verified fact. But if your friend screams, the engine block just exploded into 1,000 pieces,
yeah,
the presence of the oil does not prove the engine exploded. It just proves there is a leak.
Right. The oil is a fact, but it doesn't tell you a piston broke. You have to aggressively separate the local verified fact from the global narrative attached to it.
Exactly. Professor Peanut is establishing that baseline. He concedes that I is chocolate, but he does not concede that it is a comet.
He's showing that a verified fact isn't the finish line.
Right. It is the starting block. We have the what, now we desperately need the how and the why.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because establishing the physical nature of the chocolate is only step one. The real breakthrough in this narrative doesn't come from looking at the chocolate chip under a microscope.
No, it comes from observing the macro behavior.
Right. They move from testing the material to analyzing the mechanics. The text notes that the comet's path seems to follow a specific pattern across the sky. And Ava takes a crucial step here. She doesn't just stare up at the sky. She takes out a piece of paper and actively draws the trail.
She maps the data points.
Yes, she maps the data points. And by drawing it, she suddenly realizes, look, the comet moves in a curve.
And that structural observation is what allows the professor to introduce a highly complex astronomical concept to the children.
Which is so cool for a kid's book.
It is. He explains the fundamental physics of orbits, teaching them that planets, moons, and actual comets move through space in predictable, mathematically structured patterns.
And I just love Ava's drawing step here because it perfectly mirrors modern data visualization. I mean, when you are standing in the middle of Sprinkle Valley getting pelted by falling marshmallows with your neighbors screaming, you are way too close to the chaos to understand it.
All you see is a mess of sugar and panic.
Exactly. But when you take out a piece of paper and plot the data on a graph, you force yourself to zoom out. You abstract the localized chaos into a macro-level map, and suddenly a pattern emerges. You see the curve.
Shifting from anecdotal, ground-level observation to systemic observation is really the only way to see the truth. Because an orbit isn't just a curved line drawn in the sky.
Right.
It's a constant state of free fall. The object is falling toward the gravitational center, but moving sideways fast enough that it keeps missing the ground.
That's a great way to describe it.
Yeah, and that specific tension between gravity and velocity creates a very precise mathematical curve. The author is showing us that mapping the data is the ultimate stress test for any hypothesis.
Because if you want to claim this thing as a comet, it has to physically act like a comet.
That leads directly to Karl Popper's theory of falsifiability, which is basically the bedrock of modern science.
Oh, I'm glad you brought him up.
Popper argued that you can't just look for evidence that confirms your theory. You have to actively look for the specific data point that would destroy it.
Right, the falsifying evidence.
Exactly. By mapping the object's path, the professor is asking, does the behavior of this object align with the physical laws governing a comet?
And if it didn't?
If Ava's map data has shown the object doing erratic zigzags or stopping in midair and reversing direction, that single observation would immediately falsify the comet hypothesis, because celestial bodies bound by orbital mechanics do not zigzag.
Wow. So the map data provides the structural logic. You take the physical evidence, the verified chocolate, and you cross-reference it with the structural evidence, the curve of the path.
Which sets up the climax perfectly.
It does. This specific intersection sets us up for the moment where the map data and the physical evidence finally collide. And it reveals a truth that completely shatters the town's initial emotional assumptions.
The moment of falsification arrives.
The big twist. Through their systematic investigation, they discovered that the anomaly wasn't a comet at all.
Not even close.
It was a giant chocolate factory balloon. It had been shaped and painted to look like a comet for a local festival, and it accidentally broke off its tether and floated away.
And the candy.
The afternoon sun had beaten down on the balloon, melting the actual real chocolate decorations attached to it, which is what caused the chocolate chips and marshmallows to rain down across Sprinkle Valley.
It is a stunningly parsimonious explanation.
I know, right?
It's simple, elegant, and it perfectly accounts for every single collected data point without requiring any magical thinking.
It accounts for everything. Why it looked like a comet, why 100% real chocolate was falling from it, and why it was moving in a slow, curved path across the sky.
A runaway balloon caught in a prevailing wind current would absolutely mimic a sweeping trajectory.
Totally. And the resolution of the story is fantastic because the town doesn't, form an angry mob. They laugh.
Which is so refreshing.
Right. Ben, the kid who spent the entire morning shouting that they were under existential threat, has this profound moment of self-awareness. He looks at the balloon and says, "We spent all day solving a mystery about a runaway balloon."
The intellectual humility in that realization is a rare and beautiful thing to see modeled, especially for children.
Absolutely. The factory owner apologizes for the panic. He rewards the investigative team with a small chocolate treat. And finally, Professor Peanut grins and delivers the closing moral.
Bringing it all home.
He says, "And now you know the difference between a real comet and a giant chocolate balloon," which prompts the town to cheer, concluding what the text calls the sweetest science lesson ever.
The mechanics of that conclusion are what provide the most value for an adult audience, I think.
So what does this all mean? How does a fictional trip to Sprinkle Valley actually apply to the listener who's, sitting in traffic or folding laundry right now?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, This narrative is synthesizing the absolute core tenets of scientific literacy.
Right.
It demonstrates that curiosity, combined with empirical isolation and careful data mapping, are the only tools that turn frightening, chaotic mysteries into manageable discoveries.
For sure.
But the deepest insight here, the real aha moment of the text, is about the nature of modern misinformation.
Oh, unpack that a bit more.
Well, misinformation is rarely a complete 100% fabrication. The most dangerous viral rumors are the ones that contain a kernel of genuine physical evidence.
Okay.
Think about the balloon. It wasn't dropping fake plastic candy. The sun was melting real, chemically verifiable chocolate.
Oh, wow.
That is why the town was so easily fooled. The false narrative wore the skin of a verified fact. The story teaches us that just because a piece of evidence is real does not mean the sensational story built around it is true.
That is such an incredible point. I want to talk directly to you, the listener, for a second. Think about the digital landscape you navigate every single time you open your phone. We are constantly living in Sprinkle Valley.
It's so true.
The algorithms powering your social feeds are essentially engineered to drop isolated marshmallows on your head all day long.
Just constant sugar drops.
Exactly. A flashy, terrifying, out-of-context quote, a manipulated statistic, an outrageously too good to be true headline, and it is so incredibly easy to just let your amygdala hijack your brain and blindly chase that marshmallow trail.
You just run after the outrage or the excitement.
Right. You share it, you comment on it, you let your blood pressure spike because it feels so dangerous or so delicious. But how often do you actually stop, channel your inner Professor Peanut, and test the oil puddle to see if the engine actually exploded?
It requires immense cognitive discipline to pause, because the digital economy is explicitly designed to provoke Ava and Ben's initial unthinking reactions.
They want that immediate reaction.
The platforms want you to shout delicious or dangerous immediately, because emotional polarization drives maximum engagement.
Yep.
What the ecosystem absolutely does not want you to do is stop, isolate the physical claim, map its logical trajectory against known reality, and ask if it makes structural sense.
Because if you take the time to draw the map, you usually find the runaway balloon.
Exactly.
You find the innocent human mistake or the intentional marketing misdirection that got blown entirely out of proportion, and that is why the town's reaction at the end of the stories is the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
They laughed at themselves.
They gracefully accepted that they'd been fooled.
Right, they let go of their initial panic.
In our modern world, people rarely want to admit they spent their precious time and energy chasing a balloon. When a viral rumor is finally debunked by mapped data, people often double down.
Oh, the time.
They refuse to let go of the emotional high or the righteous anger that the rumor provided them.
They want the magical space comet to be real so badly that they get furious at the scientists for proving it's just inflated plastic.
Precisely. The ability to gracefully look at the evidence, regulate your ego, and say, I was wrong, it was just a balloon, is the absolute hallmark of a healthy, critically thinking mind.
This has been such a genuinely illuminating deep dive. I mean, who knew that a children's story about a candy-dropping inflatable could offer such a sophisticated framework for cognitive psychology?
It really is a masterclass in intellectual patience.
It's a brilliant reminder that before we eagerly consume the space chocolate presented to us, we really need to investigate the source.
Sure. Look for the falsifiable evidence.
Exactly. So as we wrap up our analysis today, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, building entirely on the mechanics of this story. Think about how the illusion in Sprinkle Valley actually functioned.
The setup was perfect.
Right, a runaway balloon painted perfectly to look like a comet, and the sun-melted real chocolate decorations dropping genuine physical evidence that perfectly matched the town's false magical narrative. It easily fooled an entire population because the fake phenomenon dropped real clues.
It's a scary thought.
It is. So, as you go back into your day, scroll through your news feeds and listen to the latest viral outrage. Ask yourself, what highly convincing melted decorations are dropping into your own daily life right now?
That's the real question.
What isolated fragments of truth are out there perfectly disguising ordinary human mistakes or highly intentional misdirections as grand, mysterious phenomena? Keep your eyes on the data, draw the curve, and always watch out for the balloons.